Chronic anxiety. How to find inner peace. When everything seems out of control, have you ever found yourself trapped in a whirlwind of anxious thoughts, where your mind seems to find no rest? Chronic anxiety is one of the most challenging invisible forces of our time, eroding our inner peace and leaving us at the mercy of constant worries. But what if, instead of succumbing to fear and tension, you could transform anxiety into a powerful tool for self-discovery and inner strength? What if, instead of being consumed by the uncertainty of the future, you could find serenity and act with confidence in the face of life? In this video, we'll explore how to overcome chronic anxiety, not as a one-time event, but as a continuous process of transformation. Through practical strategies and powerful philosophies like Stoicism, you'll learn to rebuild your mind and create an unshakable mindset that remains steady amidst daily challenges. If you're tired of living in a constant state of fear and worry, it's time to take the first steps to free yourself from anxiety and regain emotional control. Comment below. What has been the biggest challenge in your struggle against chronic anxiety? Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to not miss any transformative content on overcoming crises and developing a strong mindset. What is chronic anxiety and how it affects your life? Chronic anxiety is a constant presence, a shadow that follows every step. It's not just a fleeting moment of worry, but a persistent mental state that drains energy and occupies the mind's space. Unlike normal anxiety, which arises in specific situations and fades after the issue is resolved, chronic anxiety settles in persistently, like a psychological pressure that offers no respite. You may feel the weight of uncertainty, constant worry about the future, or a sense of fear without a clear cause. Waves of anxiety can surge suddenly without warning, stealing the present moment and leaving you with a feeling of lack of control. This lack of control is one of the main characteristics of chronic anxiety. It makes you believe you're always at the mercy of your emotions, as if fear were your only companion. It's not uncommon for this cycle to begin with small worries that, over time, accumulate and intensify. The problem is that, when left unaddressed, chronic anxiety takes root in both the mind and body, creating a constant physical and emotional reaction. It can manifest as muscle tension, difficulty sleeping, persistent fatigue, and even trouble concentrating, turning daily life into a battlefield. The mind loses clarity and begins to drown in a sea of worries and negative thoughts. However, chronic anxiety is not a life sentence without escape. By recognizing its roots and the effects it has on our lives, we can begin the healing process. With deep self-awareness, we can start identifying anxiety triggers and turn them into opportunities for growth. Stoic philosophy teaches us that by focusing on what's within our control, we can find a sense of inner peace and self-confidence, regardless of external challenges. Breaking the cycle of chronic anxiety is possible, and the journey begins with understanding its origins, accepting human imperfection, and taking the first steps towards self-awareness and emotional self-discipline. The vicious cycle of chronic anxiety. How to break the pattern of constant worries. Chronic anxiety feeds on a vicious cycle that seems endless. Imagine being trapped in an invisible chain, where your worries pile up and reinforce each other with every thought. A simple concern about the future quickly turns into another and another, creating a wave of fear and doubt that never subsides. This cycle, fueled by our own resistance to discomfort, makes us believe we're lost amidst so much uncertainty. But the truth is, by understanding the cycle, we can break it and regain control of our mind. The first step to breaking the cycle of anxiety is recognizing the pattern. Often, our mind enters a loop of negative thoughts, starting with a single worry and expanding into a series of assumptions about what could happen. These thoughts create intense emotions, like fear and panic, which become fuel for more worries. The lack of control over situations creates a domino effect, where each anxious thought leads to another, and another, until fear seems to occupy all mental space. However, by identifying this cycle, we can start questioning the thoughts and interrupting the automatic repetition of these vicious cycles. Stoic philosophy teaches us that our happiness doesn't depend on external circumstances, but on our response to them. This means that by changing our perspective and adopting control over our reactions, we begin to break the pattern of negative thoughts. Emotional self-discipline is the key to interrupting the anxiety cycle. When we pause to breathe, question, and reassess our thoughts, we start to free the mind from excessive worries. With this, anxiety loses its power, and we can replace fear with a more balanced mindset, focused on the present and constructive actions. The journey to break the anxiety cycle is gradual, but with consistent practice, we can reclaim our inner peace. The impact of chronic anxiety on the body. How to calm the body and mind. Chronic anxiety doesn't just affect our mind, it also has a profound impact on the body. When we live under constant pressure and anxiety consumes us, our body begins to suffer from the physical symptoms of this tension. The heart beats faster, muscles tense up, breathing becomes shallow, and eventually, the body sends warning signals. This physical tension caused by anxiety can result in muscle pain, breathing difficulties, and even digestive issues, creating a vicious cycle between mind and body. True healing from chronic anxiety can only be achieved when we address both the mind and body, seeking to restore their balance. Conscious breathing is one of the most effective ways to calm both the body and mind. When we feel anxious, our breathing becomes rapid and shallow, intensifying the sense of loss of control and fear. However, by practicing deep breathing, we can activate the parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for the relaxation response. Breathing deeply for a few minutes brings an immediate sense of calm and helps relax tense muscles. Stoic philosophy teaches us not to be dominated by emotions, and by taking control of our breathing, we practice emotional self-control, one of the foundations for overcoming chronic anxiety. When we breathe with intention, we not only calm the body but also prepare the mind to act in a more balanced way. Additionally, regular physical activity is another fundamental pillar for calming the body and reducing chronic anxiety. Exercise not only helps release endorphins, the feel-good hormones, but also relieves accumulated muscle tension, alleviating the physical effects of anxiety. By combining conscious breathing with physical exercise, we train our body and mind to work together to restore balance and strengthen our emotional health. The daily practice of these techniques helps build mental and emotional resilience, allowing us to face life's challenges with more tranquility and confidence. When we understand the impact of anxiety on the body and take action to restore this balance, we begin to overcome chronic anxiety in a lasting way. How Stoic philosophy can help manage chronic anxiety. Stoic philosophy offers powerful tools for dealing with chronic anxiety. For the Stoics, life isn't about avoiding difficulties but learning to face them with serenity and self-control. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic masters, reminds us that it's not the things that disturb us, but our opinion of them. This means that chronic anxiety is often not caused by the events themselves, but by how we interpret and respond to them. Controlling the mind and accepting what's beyond our control are central Stoic principles that can help us overcome anxiety. By applying Stoicism to anxiety, we learn to accept what we cannot change and act with wisdom in what is within our control. This practice of acceptance is not resignation, but a way to free the mind from unnecessary worries. Marcus Aurelius, another great Stoic philosopher, teaches us to focus on what we can control, such as our actions and attitudes, and let go of anxiety about what we cannot change. This focus on action and mental discipline allows us to transform anxiety into a tool for strengthening. When we release anxiety about the future and uncertainties, we can live with more clarity and purpose in the present. By applying the Stoic mindset, we can recognize our anxious thoughts as just thoughts, not absolute truths. This perception is fundamental to breaking the cycle of chronic anxiety. Stoicism teaches us that by questioning our thoughts, we can disrupt the narrative that fuels anxiety. By acting with tranquility and courage in the face of life's challenges and accepting uncertainties with serenity, we can significantly reduce anxiety symptoms and live in a more balanced and centered way. The practice of deep breathing. How breathing can calm your mind and body. Deep breathing is one of the most powerful tools for calming the mind and reducing the symptoms of chronic anxiety. When anxiety invades us, the body's first response is to speed up breathing, making it short and shallow. This breathing pattern intensifies the feeling of panic and fear, creating a vicious cycle of growing anxiety. However, by practicing deep breathing, we can break this cycle and restore tranquility. Deep breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for the body's relaxation response, helping to calm emotions and bring mental clarity. The deep breathing technique involves inhaling slowly through the nose, fully filling the lungs, and then exhaling in a controlled manner through the mouth. This simple process has a powerful impact on our body and mind. By focusing on breathing, not only does anxiety decrease, but we also redirect our attention to the present moment. This allows us to break the cycle of worries and take control of our thoughts. Conscious breathing teaches us to calm our mind in a way that, with practice, we begin to react more balanced to everything that challenges us. When we allow ourselves to pause for a moment and breathe deeply, we offer our mind and body a space to rebalance. Beyond being an immediate relief tool, the regular practice of deep breathing also strengthens our emotional resilience in the long term. When incorporated into the daily routine, conscious breathing becomes a self-care habit that not only reduces anxiety, but also improves overall health and sleep quality. Stoicism teaches us to act with control, and deep breathing is one of the most effective ways to train our mind to react calmly and in a controlled manner. By turning breathing into a daily practice, we develop a stronger mindset, where anxiety no longer has the power to dominate us. The importance of self-awareness for overcoming chronic anxiety. Deep self-awareness is one of the keys to overcoming chronic anxiety. Without knowing ourselves, it's difficult to understand the root of anxiety and how it manifests in our lives. Often, anxiety arises not only from external events, but from the internal interpretations we make of those events. By knowing ourselves deeply, we can identify the emotional triggers that cause distress and, with that, gain more control over our emotional reactions. Self-awareness is not a destination to be reached, but a continuous journey that allows us to learn about ourselves and our limitations while exploring our strengths. One way to develop self-awareness is through constant reflection. The practice of keeping a journal or engaging in daily meditations can help us notice patterns of thought and behavior that contribute to increased anxiety. When we recognize these patterns, we can question them, challenge them, and ultimately replace them with more balanced and positive thoughts. Stoicism teaches us that our emotions should not be controlled by automatic thoughts, but by our ability to reflect and act with discernment. When we understand our fears and anxieties, we can approach them with more self-control and wisdom, significantly reducing their impact on our lives. Deep self-awareness is also closely tied to self-respect and the construction of unshakable self-esteem. By accepting our vulnerabilities and understanding our weaknesses, we can work on them constructively, without letting self-criticism or toxic comparisons with others hinder our growth. Cultivating self-awareness is a gradual but powerful process that not only reduces anxiety but also increases self-confidence and allows us to live according to our deepest values. With self-awareness, chronic anxiety loses its strength as we begin to react to life's challenges with more clarity, purpose, and serenity. How to create daily habits that help control chronic anxiety. Chronic anxiety often feeds on a lack of structure and the absence of healthy habits that help strengthen the mind and body. However, by adopting daily habits that prioritize our mental health, we can significantly reduce anxiety symptoms and increase our emotional resilience. Mental discipline and consistency are fundamental to creating a routine that over time transforms how we deal with stress and anxiety. Habits like meditation, physical exercise, and self-care are not just wellness activities but powerful tools for addressing anxiety in a lasting way. Start with the practice of daily meditation. By dedicating just a few minutes a day to calming the mind, you create a space of inner peace that can help reduce anxiety. Conscious breathing during meditation, for example, helps calm the nervous system, allowing you to distance yourself from anxious thoughts and connect with the present moment. Stoic philosophy teaches the importance of taking time to reflect and cultivate inner silence, and meditation becomes an effective practice for this. Additionally, daily physical exercise, such as walking, yoga, or activities that promote body movement, helps release endorphins, the natural feel-good hormones that promote well-being and reduce feelings of tension and anxiety. Consistent self-care practice is also an essential habit for controlling chronic anxiety. This can involve simple actions like maintaining a healthy diet, getting enough sleep, and seeking moments of leisure that connect us with happiness and relaxation. These habits, though simple, have a significant impact on emotional health. By cultivating a daily routine that prioritizes our mental and physical health, we create a virtuous cycle that strengthens our mind and enables us to face anxiety with more clarity and inner confidence. Adopting these habits not only reduces anxiety symptoms, but also provides a strong mindset that helps us overcome crises and grow with each challenge. The connection between chronic anxiety and lack of emotional self-control. Chronic anxiety and a lack of emotional self-control are often intertwined, creating a vicious cycle that can be hard to break. Anxiety arises when the mind loses control over emotions, and in turn, the lack of emotional control exacerbates anxiety, creating a continuous spiral of worries and fears. When we don't know how to manage our emotions, they tend to take the reins of our lives, driving our reactions impulsively and often irrationally. This behavior prevents us from living in a more balanced and healthy way, causing constant emotional discomfort. Emotional self-control is, therefore, essential for interrupting this cycle and finding a path to inner peace. The first step to overcoming chronic anxiety and restoring emotional control is recognizing that emotions don't need to dictate our actions. Mental self-discipline allows us to observe our emotions without being dominated by them. Stoic philosophy teaches us that emotions are natural, but we shouldn't be slaves to them. We must learn to act with wisdom and not react impulsively, allowing our decisions to be guided by reason rather than fear or insecurity. By practicing emotional self-control, we learn to accept our emotions without being consumed by them, providing a sense of freedom and emotional balance. One of the most effective practices for developing emotional self-control is conscious reflection. When we feel anxiety rising, instead of letting ourselves be swept away by emotional impulsivity, we can take a step back, breathe deeply, and assess the situation with clarity. This practice of pausing to reflect is essential for breaking the cycle of chronic anxiety. By doing this consistently, our ability to control our emotional reactions strengthens, and we begin to realize we can act with more calm and self-confidence, regardless of external situations. Emotional self-control is a mental muscle that, when well-trained, allows us to live with more serenity, free from being dominated by anxiety or fear. Inner silence. How to find peace amidst chaos. Inner silence is a precious refuge, especially in moments of chronic anxiety. We live in a society that values constant noise, whether from information, social interactions, or our own internal worries. This incessant noise fuels anxiety and prevents us from finding the peace needed to live with clarity and balance. Inner silence, on the other hand, is the practice of disconnecting from external distractions and seeking serenity in the deepest part of our being. This practice is one of the most powerful for calming the mind and reducing anxiety, as it allows us to break free from the cycle of negative thoughts that keep us trapped in fear and worry. To achieve inner silence, it's necessary to create moments of reflection and pause. Stoic philosophy teaches that by cultivating inner tranquility, we can respond to life's challenges with more wisdom and balance. When we allow ourselves conscious pauses throughout the day, whether through meditation, deep breathing, or simply sitting in silence, our mind begins to slow down and gain clarity. This space of silence enables us to be more attentive to our thoughts and more aware of our emotions without being dominated by them. With inner silence, we can observe anxiety without identifying with it, allowing it to pass without affecting our balance. Moreover, inner silence helps strengthen our mental resilience. By cultivating silence, we become more centered, more present, and more capable of facing external chaos with calm and confidence. When the mind is at peace, anxiety loses its strength. Emotional self-control becomes a daily practice where we don't react impulsively, but with a strong and balanced mindset. Silence, then, becomes not just a momentary relief from anxiety, but a continuous tool for maintaining mental peace and living with greater control and clarity. Overcoming the fear of the future. How to accept uncertainty and live in the present. Fear of the future is one of the main sources of chronic anxiety. We're constantly bombarded with uncertainties. What will happen to our career, our relationships, our health? These fears, often unconscious, can become overwhelming, clouding our ability to live fully in the present. However, by accepting uncertainty, we can free our mind from excessive worries and live more balanced lives. Fear of the future is natural, but it only becomes paralyzing when we let it consume us to the point of forgetting to live in the now. Stoic philosophy offers profound wisdom on how to deal with the uncertainty of the future. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, teach us to focus on what we can control while accepting with serenity what is beyond our reach. The future is, by definition, uncertain, and anxiety arises when we try to control something beyond our grasp. Living in the present is a practice that helps us regain control over what truly matters, without being consumed by tomorrow's worries. By accepting that the future is unpredictable, we can face the present with more confidence and emotional balance. The strong mindset needed to overcome fear of the future is rooted in self-discipline and acceptance. When we surrender to the now, when we begin to act with clarity and wisdom in the present, we discover that anxiety diminishes. The uncertainty of the future loses its ability to control us because we focus our energy on what we can do now to improve our lives. Living with more presence, appreciating the moment, and accepting what we cannot change allows us to break free from anxiety and act with greater inner confidence. Life happens in the present, and by accepting this truth, we can truly enjoy the journey without being dominated by fear of what hasn't yet happened. Transforming chronic anxiety into motivation for personal growth. Chronic anxiety often presents itself as a constant pressure on our shoulders, but what would happen if, instead of letting it paralyze us, we began to use it as fuel for personal growth? Anxiety doesn't have to be a sentence of stagnation. If we learn to channel the energy of anxiety into positive actions, we can transform one of our greatest challenges into one of our greatest sources of motivation. This doesn't mean denying or suppressing feelings of anxiety, but learning to recognize the power these feelings can have when used correctly. Stoic philosophy teaches us that adversities are opportunities in disguise. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminds us that difficulty is training for virtue, and chronic anxiety, as painful as it may be, can become a catalyst for transformation. When we accept anxiety as part of our human experience instead of fighting against it, we begin to use its energy to act with more determination. Every moment of anxiety becomes a chance to act with greater clarity, learn more about ourselves, and grow. Anxiety ceases to be an obstacle and becomes a tool for self-improvement. It's important that, when channeling anxiety's energy into constructive actions, the focus is on small daily steps. It's not about achieving a grand transformation immediately, but acting consistently, using each moment of anxiety as a signal to act with courage and discipline. Self-discipline, emotional self-control, and a strong mindset are essential for transforming chronic anxiety into a motivating force. As we learn to act amidst anxiety, our inner confidence grows, and what once seemed a burden now becomes a catalyst for positive changes in our lives. The importance of acceptance. How acceptance can reduce chronic anxiety. Acceptance is often seen as resignation, but in reality it's one of the most powerful strategies for reducing chronic anxiety. When we talk about acceptance, we're not referring to passivity or indifference, but to recognizing what's beyond our control and focusing on what we can change. Chronic anxiety often arises from our resistance to what we cannot control, the future, others' actions, and life's uncertainties. Acceptance invites us to free the mind from this burden of unnecessary worries and live with more inner peace. Stoicism teaches that accepting the uncontrollable is the key to emotional liberation. When we start to accept what we cannot change, we begin to release the energy previously consumed by constant worry. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, speaks about the importance of accepting situations as they are, without rebelling against them. He reminds us that anxiety and suffering arise when we try to control what's beyond our reach. Acceptance allows us to face life's challenges with more serenity, without the need to fight against reality. Accepting life's imperfection and the uncertainty of the future also strengthens our self-confidence and mental resilience. By accepting that we don't have control over everything but do have control over how we react to situations, we begin to act with more clarity and confidence. Acceptance doesn't mean not acting or not seeking improvements, but acting with more wisdom, without letting fear or anxiety paralyze us. When we accept life as it is, chronic anxiety loses its power over us, and inner peace becomes an achievable reality, even in moments of adversity. How to build an unshakable mindset. Developing inner strength to overcome chronic anxiety. Building an unshakable mindset is essential for overcoming chronic anxiety and living with more inner peace. A strong mindset doesn't mean the absence of emotions or the ability to ignore suffering, but the capacity to act with clarity and courage even in the face of adversity. When anxiety tries to dominate, an unshakable mindset is the foundation that allows us to face fear and overcome challenges without being consumed by them. The path to this mindset begins with self-discipline and deep self-awareness, where we learn to understand and control our emotions instead of being controlled by them. Stoic philosophy is an excellent ally in building an unshakable mindset. The Stoics, like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, taught that true power lies in the response we give to events, not in the events themselves. They believed we cannot control the external world, but we can always control our reactions. By practicing emotional self-control and focusing on the present, we can cultivate a strong mind that doesn't waver in the face of life's difficulties. When we develop this inner strength, anxiety loses its power over us because we don't allow it to control us. Instead, we use anxiety as an impetus to act with more clarity, make decisions with confidence, and maintain serenity, even in times of uncertainty. Mental resilience is another essential component for creating this unshakable mindset. It allows us to recover quickly from challenging situations and move forward even after difficult moments. Developing resilience involves the ability to learn from mistakes, overcome failures, and stay true to our principles, regardless of external circumstances. By cultivating a strong mindset and self-compassion, we can overcome chronic anxiety in a lasting way and build a more balanced life, where inner confidence and self-discipline become the foundations of our emotional well-being. Now that you have the tools to face chronic anxiety, it's time to put them into practice. Remember, anxiety doesn't have to be a sentence of constant suffering. By applying the practices of deep self-awareness, self-discipline, and the teachings of Stoic philosophy, you can transform your mind, break the cycles of fear, and start living with more serenity and self-confidence. Controlling anxiety begins with controlling your mind, and you are the only one responsible for taking the first step. Ask yourself now, what actions can you take today to break the chains of chronic anxiety and start building a more balanced and peaceful life? How can you use fear to fuel your personal growth and achieve emotional freedom? Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us how you're applying today's strategies in your life. Don't put off until tomorrow what you can start changing now. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell to keep receiving content that will help you master your mind and achieve emotional balance. True change begins now. Free yourself from anxiety and start living according to your true potential.